this is a kind of a vlog. We'll see how it goes. It's a little bit of a mishmash of just stuff that I'm doing, and I thought I would just put the camera on and share with you what I'm doing here. So I spent the whole morning out. I had to go and run errands, and when you live in a very rural location like I do, running errands means usually at least an hour of driving to begin with to get to where you want to go, and then the errands and everything. So anyway, I've come back and I need to get started on a new project, and it is a project with a deadline, and I want to get going with it because I don't work very well with deadlines. I need to have things moving and I need to work on things early, otherwise I get really stressed. So I've come into the studio and I thought, hey, I will start on that project. I'm also wearing my big puffy coat because it's quite chilly in here at the moment. I've just put the heater on. And so, yeah, I wanted to start working on it, and I walked in and it's kind of like a bomb has gone off in here because I have several projects on the go at the moment. And by several, I mean more than several. Like, there are heaps of projects on the go at the moment. One of the projects, if you have been watching on my weaving channel, is the hand-woven quilt that I'm doing. That's what all of this on my big table is. So I had to, oh, it's a long story, but I didn't have time because we've had a death in the family, and I also had yarn ordered for weaving more fabric for this project, and the yarn order took a lot longer than I expected. And all that to say, I've had these quilt blocks sitting on my big cutting table for ever so long, and I just kept saying to myself, it's okay because I will get to that fabric, I'll weave that fabric really quick, and I'll get the top of the quilt pieced and finished, ready for the next step, and then I can have this space back. Well, it's just not happening, and I find that every time I walk in here, it's stressful to have this big table space covered with stuff and unusable. I've actually wanted to use it for other things and haven't been able to. So the time has come, and the time is right now, that even though I don't have all of these quilt blocks sewn together, because I still do need that extra fabric to go between them, what I'm doing is just quickly clipping them together so that I know roughly what layout they were in, because that was the reason that I didn't want to move them in the first place, is they were in a specific layout and I wanted to keep that layout. But really, I just had to do something different. And then I've got things like my daughter's singing music stuff in here because she does her singing practice in here. And yeah, it's just a bit of a mess, and I just don't work well with messes. I'm not a minimalist by any means, but I like things to be a bit tidy because then I feel tidy in my mind and I can process everything okay. And if I'm not like that, then I get flustered. So I wanted this space for a couple of reasons. One is I've been working on my crochet granny square blanket, and that's going fine, but I've got a lot of squares now that I need to block, and this is also my blocking space here. So there's that, and then there's the other project that I mentioned that I want to get started on. And I need this space to lay out yarns because I need to make some yarn decisions. You see, I've just got these random bits of fabric laying here and there and everywhere. But this is going to be good. I'm actually glad that I'm doing this now. And even if I don't have the exact same order that I had planned for the blocks as they were laid out, that's okay. I can get it back, I can put them in a different order, whatever. It's okay. It's more important that I put this project aside just for a little while, get on top of some other things that have just been weighing on me terribly. And once I'm on top of those, then I will feel very clear and happy to come back to all of this and lay this all out again and weave that extra fabric that I need to weave and all those things. sometimes the best planning that you can do just doesn't work because things happen that you can't control. And that's just normal, and it's better to just say, yes, okay, I accept that, I'm not going to fight it, and so I'm going to make things easier on myself. Okay, that is feeling so much better already, just having that clear, shiny space there. But now I've got, this is another work in progress, another unfinished project. And that is that I was just winding this skein of yarn for a weft yarn for another project that I'm using on my rigid heddle loom. But the thing is, it's a lace weight yarn, so it's very light, and it was taking quite a while to wind it into a yarn cake on my ball winder. And so I just wound off as much as I needed to get started because I was very anxious to get started on the project as well. And now I'm left with this umbrella swift here on the edge of my table along with the ball winder. And these are things that also get in the way because it's not just having the clear space, it's being able to walk around things easily and not getting caught on things and knocking things. And these are the things that just drive me crazy. So I'm going to wind off the rest of this yarn, and then I'll have my ball and I can put these extra bits of equipment away. When I'm doing this, I usually like to wind off a little bit extra that I'm then going to wind onto the ball winder. Rather than winding straight off, you can wind straight off the umbrella swift. I find that it makes it a little bit too tensioned going onto the ball winder. So I can do it like that. But then, yeah, my ball winder doesn't like that so much because it likes me to wind on a little bit more loosely with the yarn, and then it makes a really nice ball. If I wind on too tightly, it kind of misplaces where it's putting the yarn and it ends up being a messy ball. So at least for my yarn swift and for how I use it with the ball winder, I find it's worth just feeding that off a little bit. Yeah, it takes a little bit longer, but I get a better ball with no knots or snags or anything in it that just feeds off the ball beautifully. So I find it worth it to do that. But as I was saying, with the lace weight yarn, it takes quite a while. So I'm going to be here for a little bit winding this ball, so you can watch me if you like. Okay, now I feel like I'm getting somewhere. So for this project, I have a lot of different yarns that I'm getting out. I've got all different ways that I plan projects, and it depends on the circumstances and whether it's like a completely free project that I'm doing for myself, or whether it's a pattern that I'm doing for either a class or as a digital download, or whether I'm doing it for something else. And I have a design brief. So I do have a design brief for this one. And so my first step for this particular project is just getting out a bunch of yarns in no particular order and with no particular fibre content. It's a mix of all different fibres. Now I can't actually reveal any details of this project of what I'm actually doing, but I can at least share this small part with you. So these are some of the yarns that I've got out. I'm going to get some more out, and then it's basically a process of elimination as to which yarns I actually end up with and what I end up using. So out of these, I'm looking at the colours, but I'm also looking particularly at this point which one is going to be my warp. And so when I'm deciding on my warp, of course it's got to be strong enough. It's got to be the right sized yarn for the project that I want to do. And then I need to consider the colour, because if I put a heap of colour in the warp, then I probably don't want a heap of colour in the weft as well. And so my thoughts at this point at least are, and this may change because I'm just in the very early phases of planning, but my thoughts at this point are to try to have a solid coloured warp, and then I can do more colour with the weft. Now when I'm looking at the warp, it's also dependent on things like, well, how much of each yarn do I actually have? Knowing the size of the project, and I haven't done the actual on paper calculations for this project yet, but just having made similar things before and knowing that I'm going to need a certain amount of yarn for this warp, then that helps with my process of elimination. I'll be more specific with that. So let's say that I picked out this green. This is a bamboo, and I was like, oh, I love this green. I want to do a solid green warp for this project. Well, actually, this is the only amount of green of this particular bamboo that I have left. And so I know that I can't possibly, there's no way that I can make a project out of this tiny amount for my warp. And so then I put that one to the side and go, okay, so that one becomes a weft possibility at this point, but not a warp possibility. Now let's have a look. Here I've got these 2 cones of purple bamboo. Now they could be a possibility for warp, and they would probably be very lovely and attractive, but again, I'm thinking, even though I've got a little bit more of the purple, obviously, than I had of the green, still it's not going to be enough for the size of the project. So again, that's going to be put in the weft pile. I have here some hand spun yarn, and it's possible that I may have enough for the warp here, but this being hand spun, it seems fairly strong, but at the same time I can't say that I'm an awesome spinner and I know the exact width, I know the exact size and the exact amount of twist in every part of this yarn. In fact, looking at the yarn right here, I can see that there are places where there's not all that much twist, and that there's a possibility of those bits abrading and wearing apart and then breaking and having broken warp ends. Don't want that. And so again, this becomes possible for the weft rather than the warp. Here I have got, what have I got here? Is this, this is merino silk, or no, this is 100% merino, okay. This is a very fine merino, very nice, and I have a lot of it. So this one could be a definite possibility for the warp. It's a solid color. I have enough of it for the project. So I can put that in the warp pile. And so you get the idea. I'm going to be going through the rest of these yarns and doing the same thing. Most of them will end up in the weft pile for a couple of reasons. One of the main reasons being just don't have enough of each color for it to be considered for warp. So it's got to go in the weft pile. The other thing is not strong enough for warp. Very pretty, very lovely, but not spun tightly. And this one, I'm looking at this one, I am absolutely sure that this would break in the warp. So that would be gorgeous in the weft though, gorgeous. And so yeah, I'll just keep going through that process of elimination. And then eventually I'll end up with enough on the warp side. Then I then have to choose, well, exactly which one I'm going to use for the warp, because I want to use one solid color. Then when it comes to the wefts, I'm going to try and think out my design a little bit more before I start. And I'm going to end up with a lot of different colors and different styles of yarn and different types of yarn in my weft pile. And I probably want to eliminate a lot of those as well, but that depends on what I end up with my design. I might end up using quite a lot of these if I want to do that, or I might end up pairing it right back. And again, it's going to come down to amounts. It won't come down to the strength of the yarn, because for my weft, I can use a yarn that would break in the warp, no problems. So the strength doesn't matter. It's more about the amount and the colors and the type and what I'm going to do for my design. So I have a lot to think about, but I can think ever so much more clearly about it now that I have all of this space to spread out my yarns, spread out my piles, and then I will go actually to the paper and I'll start calculating all the information that I need, and I'll probably make a sketch of the piece and try some different colors and different styles with the sketch. Then I'll be ready to go to the warping board and actually properly start physically on this piece. But before I go to the next step in the design process, I have even more cleaning up to do. So again, all of these cones of yarn here, they were sitting there because I was using them for the quilt project. I knew that I was going to need them soon, or I thought that I was going to need them soon. And so I just left them sitting here so that they'd be ready and easy to grab when I needed them. So for my sanity, I'm going to put these away on a shelf, nice and tidy, and I can come back to them when I actually do need them. Now I've got scraps. Oh yes. This is so funny. These pieces of fabric, I just remembered what I have them actually sitting here for. This was for another design that I was going to try out. I've even cut some little squares and gotten started. Spent quite a bit of time cutting these squares, mind you. And that was just going to be to sew a quilt block to try out for some other hand woven fabric, because I wanted to make another hand woven quilty kind of project after I'd finished my quilt. So again, I had completely forgotten about this. There's just so much has been happening that my mind has not been on any of this stuff at all. So what I'm going to do with all of this, actually, and this is all scraps from my quilt project, all the hand woven scraps as well. So I've got a box underneath, just right underneath the table here. And it's not best practice, of course, but I am going to just put these in the box for now. Again, to have less clutter up here, and then less clutter up here. So that's better already. Then I can kind of get these laid out in some semblance of tidiness. And then I got bits of fluff everywhere. So ideally I need to bring out the vacuum cleaner. I need to clean all of this down with a cloth. I feel a little bit disappointed with myself that I've let it get to this state again, because because there was a time a couple of months ago where I did a massive cleanup of the studio, and I was like, it's just so wonderful and so beautiful that I'm never going to let it get into that state again. But yeah, I have. But I've got to be gentle on myself, because I just haven't had the time or the energy, and I've had multiple projects going on, and the projects are kind of getting heaped on top of each other. Besides what's happening in the studio, there's also a lot of projects in the home and garden that have been neglected, that we're trying to get onto. We're trying to get on top of everything. So I just have to remember that it's not my fault that things have happened this way, and that sometimes you just do your best and get in and really tackle things when you can. All right, so here's the next area that needs a little bit of attention. It's not too bad over here. I've just got these warp chains that are sitting here, and these are for, well, these are what I started for the next round of fabric for the quilt project. I started on these and then I had to wait on the yarn order, and also I was away from home a lot, so I just didn't get to that. So I'm very proud of myself here. I've written down like the number of ends and stuff. I just written them on some scrap paper and then just put it with the bundles just to make sure that I don't forget exactly what I've got. And I'm just going to put those warp chains behind me somewhere over here. There we go. And they can sit there until I need them again. And then I've got a completed project here, which I'm going to put on the table, which is okay because it's folded up neatly and I can do that. And then I've just got a book that needs to be replaced. I've got a studio light here, but I will be using that to photograph my project as I go. And besides a little bit of a dust down, oh yeah, it needs a dust down, because I didn't dust it after I finished my last project because I was going to go straight into weaving more fabric. But anyway, that whether it gets a dust down or not, probably should, seeing as I'm going to be doing photography for the project. That will be, this corner of the studio is now good to go. And this is the state of my work desk area. And this is not good. This is messy. And it's not very functional because there is just stuff everywhere. Okay, I can partly blame my daughter at least. She's preparing, well, we're both preparing for a performance next week. And so we have music books everywhere, but we can at least sort of bag them up and move them to somewhere more appropriate. And then I'm also working on a rigid heddle project here, so I want to keep that loom close by because I know that I'll have little snippets of time where I can work on that project. Apart from that, I do have things on here that can be cleaned up, so I'm going to do that. Well, it's not perfect, but it is better. I could have put more things away, but I've got a lot more to do, so I'm going to get onto the calculating and planning for this project. And I'm now feeling really good about it because I have lots of space. Everything's pretty tidy, and I'm formulating a plan for what I'm going to do next. Good morning, folks. It is a brand new day. And it's a good day. It was a very cold night, at least for where I live. It was very cold. It was -1 degrees Celsius, and I looked up a conversion and it said that is 30 degrees Fahrenheit. So I don't know if that's cold for where you live, but for where I live, that is a really cold night. So it's taken a little bit to get going this morning, but I'm feeling good. I had a good sleep. I came in the studio earlier and I turned the heater on, so the heat is blasting me at the moment, which is very nice. I have got a steaming hot mug of water with some Tahitian lime juice in it, which I'm very much appreciating right now. It's keeping me warm inside and out. And I've got one of my favorite candles that I've made burning away. Looking at it, I realize that I have to make some more candles soon because I burn through them pretty fast. I'm a bit of a candle lover. And I am working on a sketch for the project that I mentioned yesterday. So the plan for today is to really dedicate a lot of time to this project that has the deadline. But also I've got my foam mats out because I have some granny squares soaking at the moment, ready to block. So that's for my granny square blanket. That's sort of an ongoing project that I just work at whenever I feel like it. And yes, I'm a little bit disheveled today, but I have washed my hair, and you know, I just get the feeling that if you're going to hang around this new channel of mine, you'll probably be seeing me like this a lot. And I think that's okay, and I think you understand. I'm going to roll with that anyway. So, because personally I think it's more important to show up than to show up immaculate. Maybe you think the same, maybe not. So yes, I will be doing a little bit more design work. I'll be doing some calculating, and then I will get to the warping board because I've got a pretty good idea of what this project is going to look like. A couple of other things that I need to get done today. I need to order some more gas. We are on bottled gas here, and we're down to our last bottle, or cylinder, I should say, cylinder. It's not like a tiny bottle, it's a big cylinder. So I need to get onto that, or we won't have any hot water or any gas to cook with. And I also need to do some singing practice again with my youngest daughter, as we have a performance coming up next week that I am just dying inside about. I'm trying to tell myself it's going to be okay. I'm putting in a lot of practice, so hopefully that makes all the difference. I don't know if I mentioned yesterday in this video, it's 20 years since I have performed publicly. So I'm quite nervous. I'm beyond nervous, but I'm trying to exude this facade of, I'm fine. It's going to be fine. It'll be great. It'll be fun. I'll love it. I'll sound wonderful. And so will she. And we'll win an award. That's the ideal situation. We'll see how it goes. It's good to challenge yourself, isn't it? I am very much a comfort zone person. I don't like to put myself out there. I don't mind challenging myself personally if it's something that I'm doing and nobody else knows anything about it. But if it's something that I'm putting myself out there in the public arena, that's different. But good for me. And I'll let you know how it goes after it's all done. And then, of course, the other thing that I want to do, well, the sun is actually shining today after such a cold night, and I want to make sure that I get out and take a walk. I got one yesterday, and I want to get another one today, prioritizing health and exercise. So apart from organizing a couple of other things that I need to do, a couple of phone calls and that sort of thing, I'm mainly aiming to be in the studio today working on this project, and I will film a little bit of what I'm doing as I go along to share with all of you. So right now I'd better turn the camera off and hop to it. I'm super happy to be getting onto this job because I've had these squares sitting there waiting for me to block them and haven't made the time to do it. And then there have been times where I've been resting And I've thought, oh, it'd be great if I had those squares that I could sew up and add to the blanket, but then they're not there because I haven't done them. So this will be really good. It's going to take a couple of days to dry properly in here, especially with the weather the way it is at the moment. So I do a pretty basic block for my crochet squares. I just check that they're around 5 inches square, so that they're all roughly the same size. I'm really not a perfectionist about that at all though. And then I just put a T-pin in each corner. Very, very simple. So I've just soaked them for an hour or so. Then I've pressed them out in a dry towel, just like same process for wet finishing. But then you go the extra step of actually pinning to make sure you've got the right measurements. And it's certainly not an exact science for me. I'm not really fussed at all if they're slightly different sizes, which some of them are. And that's okay, because your crochet, well, for me, because I'm a newer crocheter, it has actually changed a little bit over time. Rather than being a tighter crocheter, I'm a looser crocheter than I was to begin with. I was too tight to begin with, and that was giving me problems. I couldn't get the yarn to sort of flow freely through the hook and through other chains and all of that, which is kind of essential for good crochet. So I've loosened it up, and that has been better. I think what I need to do next, once I'm finished this project, is to actually change my hook size. Because I am a little bit looser, a lot of my stitches are bigger, so I would like a smaller hook, I think, for the size yarn that I've been using here anyway. I'm not going to change it now because all of my squares need to be roughly the same size, so if I changed it, it would be obvious that they weren't. But for future reference, I will do that. These are the things that you learn as you go along, and it's all good. So I'm not sure how many squares I have here to actually block today. I have quite a few. I'll probably run out of pins. That does happen. I've only got one box of T-pins. But if that happens, then I just use sewing pins instead. That works okay. Sometimes they rust, which isn't the best. Depends on the quality of the pin. Okay, so I will be blocking all of these out, and then I'll be going back to my warp on the warping board, which is going lovely. And so my aim at this point, now that the day is halfway over, is to actually get that warp, starting to get it on the loom today. It's going on the floor loom, and I'm not really fussed what stage I get it to on the floor loom today. It doesn't have to be all threaded or anything like that. I'm not going to go crazy, but if I can get it rolled on and actually then that would be great. And if I don't get to that point, that also is okay. I've had some other things crop up for today, as happens. I have to go out and help someone with their animals, which I didn't know at the start of the day, but that's fine. You just adapt as the day goes on and everything works out fine. I've gotten a little bit better recently, I think, especially since last year, which was a rough year, to be more gentle on myself, and in particular to not pressure myself to finish work projects. I was really, really bad about that, thinking that I would just push myself until something was done, because I hate leaving things unfinished. But when the choice was taken out of my hands, when I had a really bad turn with my health, because I had been pushing myself and stressing myself so much and working so much, Well, that has taught me a lesson. And I think that was the whole purpose of the whole thing. It was a lesson to stop that. Stop doing that. So now, if I don't finish something, it's okay. I just leave it. And I think, okay, I'll get back to that when I get back to it. Hopefully it's the next day. Sometimes it's the next week. Sometimes it's longer. But that's just life. Okay, use my last T-pins, so have to pull out the sewing pins. The sewing pins, I use them in just the same way as I use the T-pins. I just stick them straight into the foam mats. If you do any blocking with any of your crafts, I really, really recommend these foam play mats. That's what they are. They're for kids to play on as a soft surface. But they are just perfect for blocking. I'm so glad I got them. I used to use towels, like I used to pile up towels and try and do it that way, and it just really didn't work very well because, of course, when the crochet or the knitting would start to shrink, like contract as it dried, then it would move the towels, of course. So I finally bit the bullet and got these wonderful mats. No regrets there. Right, how many have I got left? Oh, I've only got 2 left. Is that it? Great. That's good. Well, I don't need to have all of these mats out that I got out. And that's good. That means I've got that half of the table that I can use again. Because as you saw in my last video, it's a bit of a challenge if there's no space. Things are all used up. I had a dream about a loom last night, which is interesting. I just remembered it before. And it was about a Magado loom by Louet. You can look them up if you don't know what they are. But it's my dream loom, basically. And I'm living on the hope that one day I will own one. But they're very, very expensive. So I may or may not ever own one. But anyway, in this dream, in real life, I had decided that if I could get one, I wanted to get a mechanical dobby loom, not an electronic dobby loom, because the electricity here is not reliable. And also I like mechanical objects rather than ones that are always powered by electricity, because there's so much electricity in our lives. And so in the dream, hang on, I'll come down here so you can see me. Then I can actually talk to you. In the dream, someone said to me, and I don't remember exactly who it was, but it was supposedly someone who was in the weaving world who really knew their stuff. Like they were very well known and respected in the weaving world. And they said to me that the mechanical loom, like they sort of talked about it in a way of like, oh, I'd never get the mechanical loom. It's way too much work. So they were talking about setting up the dobby, which is like a peg system at the side of the loom. If you look it up, you'll get an idea of what I mean. With the electronic dobby loom, you plug in your laptop, whatever you have, to the interface, and it happens electronically. Yes, that's very appealing, but as I said, electricity, that doesn't do it for me. And also, the electric loom is even more expensive again than the mechanical one is. But anyway, in the dream, I thought to myself, and I remember thinking to myself in the dream, I was mistaken about wanting a mechanical loom. I actually really want the electric loom because of what this person said. I was like, how could I even consider having the mechanical loom now? And then when I woke up, I had like that half confused dream state where I was like, did I actually say that to someone that I really want the electric loom, or I've decided on the electric loom? It was weird. And then, of course, as I woke up, I was like, oh, it was a dream. Good. So anyway, I've got all my squares blocked out, and they'll be sitting there for a couple of days, and then when they're dry, I'm going to join them up to my blanket, which is growing very slowly but nicely. So now I'm going to head back to the warping board, and then eventually I'm going to have to feed myself and have some lunch. Well, I've almost missed the sunshine and it's gotten quite cold again, but here is the proof that I am out on my walk in the forest, and it's actually a really lovely time of day because it's very still and quiet and there are a lot of birds. I just had some kookaburras going before and I tried to turn the camera on to catch them for you, but they've gone quiet again. I'll turn it back on if they start up again. So yes, I did stick to my plan of just stopping work, getting out for a walk in the fresh air, and someone's lighting the fire while I'm gone, so it'll be lovely and warm when I get back. If you made it to the end of the video, thank you. Thank you so much for watching and spending some time with me today on this messy, kind of busy day. A bit what most of my days are like, really. But before I go, I wanted to tell you about, in case you haven't heard, about my newsletter that is called the Open Heart Newsletter. It's where I share stories about faith and learning and encouragement. And also, it's kind of like my inner circle. If you're interested in knowing more, I will put a link down below. It costs less than a cup of coffee per month to subscribe, and I would love to see your name on the list. Okay, so I am definitely thinking about that fire at home now, and perhaps a nice hot cup of tea and a little bit more work and the evening meal with my family and evening prayers, and there's things that I look forward to so much at the end of the day. Well, I pray for God's blessing on all of you, and I will see you next time.